Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. I am your host, Jason Miles, and if you're new to the channel, please hit like, please hit subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell as we are adding new shows and cross streams constantly. Also, please check out the latest video essay, Welcome to the Terror Dome, and the recap stream that Pascal and I did. Moving forward, we'll be doing a new call-in segment in the champagne room. So after this main show, we move into the patron-only champagne room, and it will be call-in. And if you are a patron, the number is already up. So you don't have to ask, hey, what's the number? You have to wait for me to go, hey, what's the number? It's already there. And our call screener slash mod extraordinaire, M. Toussaint, will be there to screen your call. Access to that patron-only champagne room is as low as $3 a month, or if you want to pay for the entire year, there's a 16% discount, so it's $30 for the year to be a patron. So if you want access to the champagne room, if you want to call in tonight, I know tonight's going to be a night where we're talking about hip-hop, we're talking about the 90s. Someone's going to want to call in and give their top 5. Let me just ask that question now to the chat, because I want to see this flying in my peripheral. Who is your top 5 MCs? All time. Top 5 MCs. Not groups. MCs. Top 5. That being said, let me bring in my top 5 podcaster. He may be one of the top 5. Is he the GOAT? I don't know. He is the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles. I feel that in the green room, we were having a very important conversation that was interrupted by the need to start the show.
There's 2 things we're doing today, and I'm tired of people messing with us. First of all, there is a plethora of reasons why we never start the show on time. Number 1, Pascal and I are goddamn rock stars, and we're just going to be late. Deal with it. Number 2, sometimes there's some issues behind the screens, right? There's technical issues. There's all kinds of things we don't want you guys to see. It's a mad scramble. Also, shirts unbuttoned to the top. I'm tired of you guys talking about me, my shirt buttons, and what I don't do. If you see my co-host on the side of me, he's got his shirt unbuttoned to the nipples, but I'm all the way to the top. Top button is buttoned. I just want you guys to know that.
Well, we were having a conversation about Black cultural production. And if you have not guessed already, for those of us who watch This is Revolution podcast, one of the favorite subject matters that I love about our coverage on this show is the way in which we discuss Black cultural production and Black popular culture. And one of the things that we were talking about was how the rise of Blaxploitation films in the late 60s, early 70s that come about yet are somehow being assailed by respectability type of organizations as the NAACP, Urban League types, even the Nation of Islam is talking about how they're not big fans of the Blaxploitation films. And what is the distinction between the wave of Blaxploitation movies that we see in the early 70s and the what Jason calls the second wave of Blaxploitation that we see in the early 90s with the John Singleton, Menace to Society, and that whole kind of urban underclass rooted film that comes about that literally sounds like it's singing praises to the worst nightmares of both the Kerner Commission report and the Moynihan report. at the
Yes.
same time. And what's really fascinating to me, particularly, is remembering how all of these cultural art forms, whether it be hip hop, whether it be black exploitation, whether it be Spike Lee movies, it's hard for us to realize this now because we most of us are raised within the context of the 50-year counter revolution. But people fail to realize how the rush to claim and to take pride in the concept of Black identity was a relatively new concept in the 1960s and early 70s. People failed to realize that there were still debates in Black spaces in the early 60s, in the late 50s, about whether or not Black people should call themselves Black or Negro. All right. So people need to understand that with the rise of third world internationalism, with the newly liberated post-colonial countries in Africa, and in South America, in Latin America as well, with the rise of the anti-colonial struggles with people like Fidel Castro, with the rise of Pan-Africanism as well with Malcolm X as well, there comes along this massive new racial, ethnic, and anti-capitalist nationalism and imperialism that comes along that's in the 60s. All of this new art that we're talking about, this black exploitation, all of this stuff that comes about largely in the period of demobilization is all rooted in this newly developed sense of racial consciousness that's really only coming to fruition really in that 60s, early 70s period of time. And sometimes I feel that when we talk about the need for racial authenticity or Black authenticity and how we define it, we fail to realize that the struggle to even define what that means only even starts really in the 60s. I'd like your thoughts, Jason.
One thing I've been finding in reading a lot of these academic articles that kind of range from the 2000s to the mid 90s, because that's when you kind of have this explosion of a new era of Black film. One thing I found is the 70s are looked back upon almost like how we look at the TV in the 70s as something we should be ashamed of as a people. So when Cosby comes to be, that's kind of the death of good times. Like you're never going to have good times again. But also, after Cosby's over, you're never going to have Cosby again. There's always going to have to be some sort of tinge of a working class aspect, some sort of authentically Black aspect. And one thing that we get in the 90s, to your point about this Moynihan-esque, it's the failure of the Black family, because that's kind of a running theme in all of these hood movies. Everyone comes from some sort of broken home, from movies like Juice to Menace to Society, which I think is a derivative of Boys in the Hood. It's almost a scene for scene remake. Um, that's the story, because that's the story that is actually being told in popular culture. So if you look at a movie like Sweetback's Badass Song, that movie can only exist in the 70s because it's a movie of its time. He's using rhetoric, to your point, liberation rhetoric, almost socialist-esque rhetoric. But would you call Melvin Van Peebles a socialist, a Marxist? Would you even call him I wouldn't even call him a Black nationalist, would you?
Not particularly, no.
So when you think about Melvin Van Peebles, I'm sure it's a movie he wanted to make. And also shout out for introducing us to my favorite Black yacht rock band, Earth, Wind, and Fire, in that movie. Um, but seriously, is it just a market share he figures that he can get, or is it something more? And I don't know. When you watch it, I mean, you've seen it. Do you remember that movie, Sweet
I,
Valley?
I haven't seen it in years, But again, we got to remember though, let's not forget what is allowing the financing of these movies besides the need to save Hollywood, right? Again, popular culture is being used as a demobilization technique to de-radicalize politics.
Oh, I agree. And Pascal wrote a paper about this years ago for Black Agenda Report. M. Tucson, if you could put up Pascal's, what was the name of that paper, Pascal?
Oh, that was about on Clarence Avant and the black popular culture.
Thank you, M. Tucson, if you can find that. And I think that's a very important paper to read when you think about this era that Pascal's talking about demobilization, because also another thing that we're getting is the image of the revolutionary is the image of clown.
Say it again for the people in the back. Have you noticed that?
It's in every movie. The only movie where the image of revolutionary is less clown is the movie that we watched for movie night. The first movie we watched for movie night, which is Spook Was Sat by the Door.
Spook Was Sat by the Door, yep. Which was only in theaters for like a couple of days.
And that movie is never. I've been watching every documentary you could possibly find. There's more than you think there is on this stuff. I've been reading as much as I can. I'm going to read some more tonight because I'm still kind of a little foggy on what exactly I'm trying to say in the end. But the revolutionary is now clown, and it is the black capitalist that has the keys to quote unquote liberation. And why I think this is important, especially with the show we're doing today, which is something that we don't normally do, strictly music shows kind of based around a person. And we know this conversation is going to get much deeper, especially Biggie coming to be in the mid 90s. Is hip hop becomes the anthem of black capitalism. And our guest has arrived. I don't know how much of that early show rant that he got to hear. But our guest today actually has been on the show before when it was just me, when it was just an audio only podcast. I remember sneaking off to a quiet part of the homeless hotel that I worked in and doing a 2+ hour talk with our guest journalist Justin Hunte. Black power. So Pascal, you said something in the first time you were ever on the show. Your first appearance on the show, you uttered this prescient phrase: Black power succeeded culturally where it failed politically. And nothing exemplifies the rise of neoliberal black capitalism more than hip hop. And the 90s golden era is no different. But beyond the glorification of consumer culture, let's take a deeper look at Christopher Wallace, aka Notorious B.I.G. Let me bring in my favorite hip hop journalist, Justin Hunte.
Yo, it's dope. I appreciate you guys for having me.
Thanks for coming on, brother. I appreciate it. So I read your article. Thanks for being able to come on.
Oh, no doubt. Can you hear me okay? I have my AirPods in. I'm not sure if I'm
it's a little soft.
Okay, let me see. I can take them off. I don't have any other heads. I'm at my parents' house in South Carolina. So
thank you for doing this while you're on vacation.
My tech is lower than normal. So let me see if it sounds better without the headphones.
Okay.
How's that? Is that better?
Oh, sounds lower.
Now it's lower.
Even worse.
That's good. That's good. Excellent.
That's
good. That's okay.
Yes, that's excellent.
Yes, that is perfect.
Okay, cool. Let's go.
So real quick, Justin, I have to ask you.
Sure.
Is Biggie the GOAT?
Not for me. No disrespect, and I mean that sincerely. I think that once you get to a certain tier of MC or artists, after that point is preference. Right. So I don't think that Jay-Z, Nas, Biggie, Black Thought, Scarface, I don't think that there's really that much of a difference between them. other than preference at that point. I think you can argue that they have accomplished just about the same amount of things on wax. And when I'm looking at GOATs, I'm looking at what they did musically. I'm not thinking about all of the barriers that they might have, toppled when it comes to their business acumen. I'm not thinking about, who they might have married and how many followers they got. I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about on wax stuff. So I think that there are top tier MCs that you can say without a question are, could be number one. I wouldn't be mad at them. I used to do a GOAT piece where I'd say, if you said Biggie was the GOAT, I might not agree, but I'd understand. You know what I'm saying? For me, he's not the GOAT.
You're Lauren. Okay, so first of all, being that you said that, I'm going to throw you back at you. You did a phenomenal Lauryn Hill, the GOAT. I think you might have said female MC. I think you actually gave her that extra caveat. Right. And then you went as far as to say that there was a moment in time in like 96, 97, where she was kind of on a lot of stuff and she literally was dominating the charts. Yeah. And I believe it was you that brought up the thing that she was supposed to have a verse in If I Ruled the World, but they were like, nah, this verse is too hard. We got to just have you sing the hook because you're killing the track. And you mentioned the output that she has is this one album that is highly regarded. We won't get into the particulars of that record and the lawsuits. Right. And then there's a follow-up that's kind of, and it takes years for the follow-up to come out, that has a lot of us scratching our heads like, what did we just witness? So I kind of feel a similar way about Biggie. He has this first album that, I'll be honest with you guys, and I'm ready to take this heat. And Justin, I'm doing this on my channel because if I did it on yours, I don't know if I'd be able to deal with the backlash from the black community. Thank God I live in Mexico. But I thought Biggie's first album was very horrible. I did not like it.
Oh, no, I would never say that. I'm from New York.
The songs that the videos are remixes.
That's to sell the album, though. That wasn't necessarily, in my opinion, a referendum on the quality of the album. I mean, really, there's only one song, maybe two songs on Ready to Die that were commercial ready for 1994, right? I mean, this is a very G-Funk era, right? So you got the Juicy sample and you got Big Papa, right? And so One More Chance was one more chance to make this album. That's really what that was. So.
I mean, listen, Biggie is not my GOAT by any stretch of the imagination. My GOAT, just to make it known, is Big Daddy Kane, which is someone who is not even in the normal conversation for a lot of people in a generation in the GOAT era at all. But for me, I'm a bit older. I remember the golden age of hip hop, but I appreciate Biggie for what he was. But at the same time, Ready to Die for me was a work of art. I appreciated the album. I understood the narrative that it was going for in terms of a biographical kind of discourse on the angst that the singer was going through at that time, the MC was going through at that time of his life, and I understood that completely, and I got that. I like Ready to Die more than I like the second album, without a doubt. But at the same time, what's more interesting to me than Biggie Smalls or Christopher Wallace as an MC is the confluence of events that are happening in hip hop that make the rise of Christopher Wallace necessary. I chose the word very strategically, that make the rise of him necessary. And I will make the argument that there was a scramble at that particular time in a certain geographical region within the country to produce a response to certain phenomenon that were happening in another geographical region of the country sonically, that made the necessity to find a Christopher Wallace paramount. If you could talk to that, Justin, I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Well, I never thought about it as, as intentionally or strategically that way. If I'm taking your description the way I did, I'm not sure if Biggie was a response I think he ended up being a response. I'm not sure that, Puffy and, Source and, the other, handful of players that were integral in those first couple of tracks that everybody got to hear. I'm not sure if they looked at him as an intentional response. I think that the way the album was structured, I think tended to be that. But he seemed to me as someone who was just truthfully better than words with everybody else. I mean, even if you listen to the raw freestyles that they have of him, in front of, over there.
I put that in the, yeah. Did you get a chance to watch the intro video?
Yes. It's in there, right? I mean, even if you listen to that, I mean, he's just better with words than everybody.
I make the argument that he was a hip hop prodigy.
Yeah.
At 17 years old, as an MC, in the classical sense of the MC, as someone who could literally pick up a microphone and rock a block party, right. And that's not necessarily someone who's in the studio. At 17 years old, the kid was an MC prodigy without a doubt. In terms of the way in that freestyle on that street corner, his vocal carriage and range, and to be able to project sound and a complicated vocal passage with such clarity, to me was like, okay, this cat, he's got it. He definitely had the skills without a doubt. So I agree with you in terms of him very earlier on distinguishing himself from others. And I also think that one of the things that made him interesting is that he is aesthetically counterintuitive. What's a fancy word to say that he's not a leading man looking rapper at all. He's the complete opposite of that. You got a fat, heavy guy who's clearly shopping at the XXL, clothing store for his clothing, who's got kind of like a bug eye kind of thing, who is rapping to you like he's Suave Bolo. Right. That's definitely an interesting play on charisma and attitude. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, Justin.
Well, I would like to double or add some. I'm sorry to cut you off, Justin, but I've always felt that Snoop and Nas to me kind of exist in a similar plane of selling lifestyle, and Biggie to me really almost dumbed it down of the lifestyle sale. He made it very, very easy to digest in a way that you didn't necessarily need to be from New York to understand what he was saying. Whereas Nas's first record was very, very New York-ish. But when you take out the lyrics and like read them and then put them kind of next to Doggy Style, you're like, it's the lifestyle. Just looks a little different where you live.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thesis you guys led with that I do agree with. I don't think there's any genre of music more representative of, capitalistic America than hip hop. So I think that naturally bleeds through the culture. I'll give them all credit for doing that. I'm not sure how easy to digest Biggie really was on Ready to Die, though. I know that Nas was more complicated in his style and his approach, which I think is why so many people looked at him as the second coming of Jesus. I'm not saying that as a joke, but he was like revered in that way, But Ready to Die comes out 5 months later. And, honestly, to me, there isn't that real big of a difference stylistically if you look at some of the B-sides. I think the difference between Ready to Die and Illmatic is, one, Illmatic's only 9 songs. And two, there's not one song on there that's targeting commercial radio. That's the difference between Illmatic, Doggy Style, and Life After Death from a structure standpoint to me. Illmatic was not made for anybody to really bump that on the radio. It's just not in the same way that Doggy Style
maybe
was.
Not radio here.
It's not even in the stories and the lore and how the album was put together.
Maybe not radio in California, because radio in California was very different. Remember, let's also keep in mind
real quick to that point. Not radio in California, not radio in the Midwest, not radio in Texas, not radio in the South, not radio in Virginia. So you have one area where that was that was really targeted. You know what I'm saying? And that's the difference. Because if you get LA, you got everything from Chicago West, right? So everything Dre did, there's no major media market between LA and Chicago at that point in time. There's just not one. So everybody between that however many 100 million people between Chicago and LA are all bleeding into what's happening in the LA radio. You know, if in the South, you've got Atlanta as your primary focal point. You know, some things will come down from other regions, but if you're from Miami and Houston and you don't break big in your own city, you got to go to Atlanta first, get hot in Atlanta, then you get to go back. You get to go back to Miami, then you get to be Rick Ross. You know what I'm saying? So like, there's certain places that just don't gravitate to certain types of, you know, song structures. I think Illmatic ended up losing to that, not necessarily as a detriment to the piece of art that came out. I'm just saying, if you're sitting in Greenville, South Carolina, in my parents' 90-degree house right now, you might not catch when he said, hit the earth like a common invasion. Now it's like an Afrocentric Asian, half man, half amazing. It might not hit you the same way.
I will say this, though. MTV and BET, which are where we're hearing a lot of our music. And one thing I'll even add, BET, I think their Rhapsody was a couple hours long, if I'm not mistaken. I think Rhapsody was 2 or 3 hours long. You definitely heard music that you were never going to hear on the radio. And for me, that's what broke way more than Yo MTV Raps. I believe Yo MTV Raps was only an hour.
Yeah, so, and it grew to an hour. You know, it was
that's
only
with
30 minutes at first, then it got to an hour, but then it was on 7 days a week. I think it was 6 days a week.
Towards
the
weekend
show.
It was like
on 5 days a week.
You Negroes are buying a lot of music. You got more of this stuff. We need more.
I was just talking to Ed Lover about that last week, actually. A couple of days ago, we were talking.
Did you?
Yeah, talking about that era, talking about how he got to Rap City. I'm not Rap City, excuse me, Yo MTV Raps, and the accident that was, and how big it was.
I went to the theater to see Who's the Man, by the way.
Yo, that's to me, it's a really good movie. The backstory is so Hollywood. It's not how the story is supposed to go. It's supposed to be about gentrification.
No shit.
They wrote that out, and then it got its run was truncated because that same weekend was the Rodney King verdict, and so theaters were scared to pick it up because they thought niggas were gonna go to the movies and be pissed and fight cops and fight white people. So it didn't even get the distribution it was supposed to. Still a really great movie.
You mentioned something really just cavalierly that was so important and amazing, that you have Biggie come out with Ready to Die. You have Nas come out with Illmatic. You have not too shortly after that, you have 36 Chambers coming out with Wu-Tang. Doggy Style is, within a year prior to that. What's in the water in these cities between 92, 93, 94? And what is actually going on in terms of the business of hip hop, that all of these groundbreaking albums are coming out, and a lot of them attached to kind of like regional territories as well, if you will. Or maybe you don't believe they're attached to regional territories. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I think this is also the era of the mogul. You know, I think for the first time we get a diversity in mogul, right? We get Suge Knight, whether we view him as, however we view him, Suge Knight, however we view Eazy-E, however we view Diddy, however we view Jay Prince. You know, I think these guys previously that was a Russell Simmons. Russell Simmons is the first mogul I remember, right? First real mogul, and then Sylvia Robinson before that, maybe. But these guys were also very good at being able to target different regions and find acts that would be, or find songs that would be palatable for the time period. So I think these guys, Snoop, Nas, to a degree, Nas, because he did have, when Steve Stout gets to Nas right after Illmatic, that's when he starts selling records. So let's be real about that.
Production got crispy.
I'm sorry?
Production got crispy.
And he turned mafioso. Like his content became, more movie ready, more IMAX ready.
And that's another great show you did, by the way. You talking about that conversation. I'm assuming you're from the same hood as I can't think of the brother's name right now, who's also from South Carolina, the producer.
From Greenville?
Is he from Greenville? He's from South. He's from somewhere.
Who's from South? Well, there's a lot of people from South Carolina. I mean, you talk about music producer.
He's from the '90s, late '90s, early 2000s.
Oh my God, I know you're talking about.
This is killing me.
I'm brain farting right now too. But
Okay, well, that you did a show where he had mentioned an interesting thing about this boom bap era in the mid to late 90s and how some stuff gets classified as hip hop, but it's just as gangster as anything else. Mobb Deep.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
He had went off on Mobb Deep, like he goes, it was killing people in every track.
Right.
You know what I mean? Boom bap era of their production.
It was extremely mafioso. And look, I give more credit to Biggie for the fly mafioso stuff than I do anyone else. You know, I don't know. It's not to say that Biggie's the first guy to turn gangster on the track. You know what I'm saying? But Biggie just made it seem more glamorous. You know, Biggie's imagination, you know, was sinking in ways that were, you know, more luxurious, you know, like
Ninth Wonder. Thank you, Ninth Wonder.
Ninth Wonder. Oh yeah, Ninth. Yeah, he's from North Carolina. Ninth, exactly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, then I apologize.
Yeah, no. There's someone else I was thinking of. I can't think of them right now. But who also produced around? He's actually on a few of those projects we've been talking about. But yeah, you know, I mean, it's just, to me, I think that is the era of investment. I think that's the era of the mogul. I think that all these guys had not only, you know, very, you know, I would say savvy business people behind them, but they also had organizations that had now gotten used to selling hip hop. I'm not sure we can say the same about Big Daddy Kane. I'm not sure we can say the same about Rakim, KRS-One. You know, that was a very singles era with Kane. That was a very singles era with Molly Mall, Juice Crew. That was a singles era with KRS-One. This is becoming an album era at that point in time, you know, and so they were able to structure their projects to also include things that would work on radio, things that would perform well on stage, things that would work with video in a different way. We have Yo MTV Raps is now fully established by the time you get to 93, 94. There's visual medium. People want to see their rappers in a different way now. Rap videos are starting to look more like Thriller. They want to tell stories in a different way. So I think those are the things that are happening from a macro standpoint that allows such, you know, classic revered projects from different regions to happen at the same time.
Well, so it's safe to say that the culture industry as an industry is prepared to embrace hip hop as a definitive music form that's more than just a fringe investment, but something that is a serious commentary on a generational art production for not necessarily just Black youth, for American youth at that time. It becomes something serious in terms of the culture industry at that time. Would that be a safe comment to make?
I think so. I think the infrastructure is there at that point, right?
Well,
I mean,
can we admit
literally take, if you take Yo MTV Raps, like let's just use that, right? Well, one, MTV is bigger than ever. MTV has now got spring break. MTV is going to Cancun with kids, right? Yo MTV Raps was in millions of homes, not even just in America, but around the world. Mm-hmm. Right, that show, that classic NWA show in Detroit, where the police come and pull them off stage when they do "Fuck the Police." Mm-hmm. Ed Lover and Dr. Dre were hosting that. They were so shocked that anybody in Detroit even knew who they were because they weren't sure how many people had cable. People had cable. That's in 88. By the time you get to 93, 94, I think the infrastructure is 100% there. I think that you already have now two different, or maybe one, and definitely one, arguably two generations of rap stars. You know, you've got everybody from Curtis Blow to LL Cool J to Rakim to KRS to Big Daddy Kane. That's, you know, so people are used to this. You know, that's a long way away from Rapper's Delight. That's the first hit in the history of hip hop. And people are now online and they have cable. So, you know, I think the infrastructure is there and hip hop has been around long enough. And obviously controversy sells. And I don't think there's any other genre of music that has a culture of diss tracks. So it doesn't matter what people are talking about. People are trying to read between the lines, you know?
Well, would you also add that this is also post Hammer? And Hammer, you know, from my understanding, maybe I'm wrong, is the first ridiculous, was he 10, 12, 15 million records on Can't Touch This, to the point where he's doing something that a lot of artists aren't doing at the time, which is selling products, not just malt liquor, but he's literally selling. Was it Kentucky Fried Chicken? He's got a doll. He's got a cartoon.
He got pants.
he's got pants like Michael Jackson had a jacket.
You know, I always think about Kid and Play with selling products too. People don't remember that Kid and Play cartoon. That was a great cartoon.
Kid and Play, but this is all post
consumerism.
Hammer.
Yeah.
And so if you throw Kid and Play in the mix, which was part of our discussion before you came on, kind of talking about Black cultural production after the Blaxploitation era. Mm-hmm. And I will say that House Party one of my favorite movies. I showed it to my 3-year-old son, kept his attention the whole time, even the battle rap scene blew me away. Says a lot about that film, actually.
What year did that come out, by the way?
90?
You think that's where Biggie got that interlude from on Ready to Die?
Which interlude?
Where kid hops the fence and the big dude is
oh yeah, that's where it's from.
Yeah, then he throws off the bed. He's like, oh yeah, I'm good. Then he pulls out the shotgun. Yeah, that's a classic. My mom used to cover my eyes like this on the street.
like when I think, Pascal, I don't know if you feel the same way. When I think about the success of Hammer and anyone that breaks down a door, you open it up for so many more people. And for the world I'm from, the hard rock, punk, heavy metal world, 83 was a big year because a band named Quiet Riot had a #1 hit. And once they had a #1 hit, Motley Crue got a deal, Dokken got a deal. All the bands everybody knows now all got a deal after those guys broke through. And they all got, I'm talking major label deals. When you cats are talking about 94, not all these artists are on major labels at the time.
Right.
You know, Loud is not a major label that releases Wu-Tang. So MTV is pretty huge for getting this music out to the point where now places like California have to accept it because it's just doing so well on MTV, a la Nas.
Well, I also want
to was huge where I'm from. Huge where I'm from.
I think Run DMC was, to me, they're the ones that really broke down the door of the corporate opportunity with hip hop.
I think that Run DMC was the group that made the commercial model of what a hip hop album should be with Raising Hell. Mm-hmm. I think that they captured it with that album in '86 in terms of being what a commercially viable hip hop album should look like. I think that they epitomized it with that album in '86, and I remember that was a year that there was a big year for hip hop for me, and I remember that album vividly in terms of when it came out and how
it was out that shag. He was combing out that shag in '86.
I was my senior year in high school, man.
Exactly, you was combing out that shag. You had them Lee jeans on, some Wallabies, and nobody could tell you shit with your gazelles.
Yeah.
That was the joint.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about exactly in terms of the aesthetic of Christopher Wallace and Notorious B.I.G. and what happens pretty much after he goes away, after he passes away, in terms of what exactly do we think we miss from his lack of presence in the art form, in the genre? What do we lose when we lose Biggie?
Well, I think we lost. Personally, I think we lost the opportunity to see all of his contemporaries at their best. That one of the things that stands out to me that's so unique about that time is just the way that Jay-Z talks about his relationship with Biggie, the way Nas talks about his relationship with Biggie, the way Snoop talks about his interactions with Biggie. Just he pushed everybody, right? Truthfully, they all pushed each other. I mean, the thing, I completely forgot how many times. I mean, Biggie has 2 albums, right? The beginning of both of those albums has a Snoop reference in it. He was really chasing Snoop. Mm-hmm. He was chasing Snoop, So I think we miss. It's like when oh gosh, what's the basketball player? When Lynn Bias died, right? You know, we didn't get a chance to see Jordan get pushed in a way that we would have seen him with another guy on the Celtics who was just as athletic, was giving them hell in college, and was playing with Larry Bird. So we don't get to see Larry Bird another 5 years, right?
Mhm.
We don't get to see them pushy. I mean, to me, and this is no disrespect, Snoop takes a major step down after Doggy Style for a long time.
Yes.
He doesn't really bounce back to me until Last Meal on this last album with No Limit, you know? So where's that go? Jay-Z dominated the space in a way to where he's basically picking fights with Nas. Now, I know there's more subtleties going on back and forth, but Nas was basically like, man, what do I even do now? I don't even care. Man, I don't even care that much no more. You know, so to me, we lose other people's best for a long time. Those three guys, like if you really look at Nas, Jay, Big, Snoop, that era of people, after Big leaves, except for Jay, I mean, arguably Volume 1. Volume 1 is like this to me. I know people love it in retrospect. Oh my God, they love it so much later. Like everybody tends to do with things. But that was dicey. So to me, I think you lose everyone else's best. I think his presence created a void in the space to where it took other people time to get back on their A game. Everybody, you know, except for maybe Jay-Z.
Do you think that the shift to what some people pejoratively call coke rap overall set the direction for what hip hop became in the current moment?
You mean now or then?
Now, when it became today.
I mean, I feel like they've been rapping about coke for a long time. You know, I feel like they're rapping more about pills and stuff now. I feel like there's more, you know, more opioid rap. I mean, I hear it in the beats. You know, I mean, the trap music is like all the way turned down. Like, you know, it's like, you know, it's the depressing sound. I mean, it's really, you know, I mean, Eminem's the first rapper I've seen advertise pills, right? Yeah. Ever since Slim Shady LP, I feel like we've been veering towards lean more pills more. Not to give him credit, not to say Eminem's credit for lean. Clearly, that's something that came out the South. But we've been in an opioid era for a long time. I think people talk about coke more than they're actually doing it. And I don't think the music is necessarily representative of coke rap in that regard to me. I still think a lot of the production is more depressed sounding, which to me is a different type of drug. I think there's probably more coke rap in. To me, a lot of the sample stuff feels like disco stuff, which feels like coke. So, you know, I think maybe that 90s era was a little bit more coke rap.
Well, I would say this. I felt like it, and when I was trying to write my little intro, because usually we do these quote unquote serious shows. And I think this show is equally as serious because I think this time frame we're talking about is actually really important. And ultimately, I'm just using you, Justin, to talk about neoliberalism. That's all. That's all.
I like that discussion too.
But when I think about Biggie, I think of someone that's coming in during this boom bap, whatever you want to call it, the golden era of hip hop. But he's also riding into this new shiny suit, what you're talking about, the big budget era of hip hop with Hype Williams videos and $1 million budgets. Like, I don't think people understand how much videos have changed over the years when it comes to how much they cost to get made compared to how much they used to cost to get made.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was nothing to make $1 million video back in the day.
It was nothing to make $1 million video. Like if you weren't spending 7 figures, it's like, well, what is it even going to air?
I think some of that's, you know, I'm not saying this is standard. I'm not going to say it's standard right now, but you know, I was looking at the Heart Part 5, the Kendrick video, and how well that the face morphing stuff, how well deepfake was done. Like that was done so well.
It looked really good.
Deepfake is so expensive. Like it's so expensive. Like if you're a regular person, I'm pretty sure Kendrick didn't spend this, but if you're a regular person and do something that well, probably $1 million a face. Now, it's not cheap. We saw the budget version with the other kid, couple of years ago that made a very similar video giving homage to his influences, where he shifted his face. That was like the basic one. That's the one that you can find on Pornhub, you know, when the actors and actresses are pissed off because they put their faces on some porn chicks, but don't really look like it.
Mm-hmm.
The real one now, that's $1 million plus video right there. So maybe budgets are back for certain artists. You know,
certain artists,
maybe like 5 artists can pull that off.
That's
right
the
now.
thing. There's
but
only like,
but that was kind of like the standard back then.
There's only like a very small handful of artists. Because another thing is a lot of these young cats don't make the house. I can't speak for themselves. Don't make the house as much money, because they bring in an all ages fan base, which is kind of like the death nail to your festival or your venue. The all ages fan base is like, oh, you know, as a person that actually did numbers for a few years in the music industry, they were like, oh God, we got one of those little rappers again, like cut the bar. which is why also too, it's like people don't want to, like, look, man, you may sell out, but we don't make any real money.
But also, isn't it a part of the fact of changing from literally people buying albums to the rise of the 360 deal, to the rise of all of these new ways in which the traditional, all of this is happening before the final death of the traditional album, to the new kind of digital platforms that we have today, the new contracts that basically take almost complete usurpation and control over any production that is made by the artists. How do you think those things that come about after the period of Biggie change not only the business but the music in itself, Justin?
You know, I pin everything on I won't say everything, but I pin most of the environment we're living in today mostly on Bill Clinton signing the FCC Act of 1996, I think.
Yep.
96, 95.
Yep.
And that allowed consolidation in the space, right? So what that did was create separate silos for your rappers, right? You know, there's a population of people, and Ninth Wonder broke this down in the Ninth Wonder piece we were talking about. There's a population of people who, like in 1996, you have It Was Written and Stakes Is High, both came out, right? After that consolidation, after the FCC Act, which allowed people who allowed media companies to consolidate so there's less competition in the marketplace. So you went from like 10 labels to 4, you know, you went from like 10 TV networks to 3, you know, like there's really no competition in, you know, our distribution mechanisms, right? So you take an album like It Was Written, if you heard that album, you followed the It Was Written track, and that tended to be the more mainstream track you followed for the rest of your life after that point in time, right? Unless you're a super hip hop fan, it was going to be very difficult for you to find a Nas song next to a De La Soul song in your normal playlist or wherever you listen to music, on Rap City or Sucker Free Sunday on your radio countdown. It was going to be more difficult because there's more consolidation in the space. There's less people controlling what you hear, and therefore things that they don't own or things that they don't support aren't getting heard as much, right? So you go from that point to where we are now, and hip hop is extremely consolidated, right? I mean, MF Doom is one of my all-time favorite artists. I think MF Doom needs to be in the Smithsonian. I think he's the truest example of what happens in hip-hop when you take away all options and people aren't supposed to survive, and they create something magical that affects people regardless of their circumstances. And they do it with the mask. We don't know what they look like, right? So that is a product of a consolidated marketplace. The biggest equalizer was an open internet, and I'm not sure we have that right now. But I think, you know, we'll see where this blockchain, what happens with the blockchain. Maybe in the metaverse, we'll see what happens. You know, the blockchain world is all about the game is to be taught, not to be bought. So I think that we'll see a shift into there to find new creativity. But, you know, we're seeing the same consolidation in the marketplace now, right? I mean, we went from buying records to stealing records through the internet, and now we're renting songs on streaming platforms.
Yes.
Right. We're still not buying we're not buying songs necessarily. We're renting songs and we're buying into brands. So I don't necessarily knock labels who moved into the 360 market. That's what happens in any period of rampant piracy. Right. I don't knock it. The 360 model isn't even a major label thing. It's an independent model. That's what Duck Down was doing. That's what Rhymesayers was doing in the 90s, just to keep the lights on. Like they couldn't go out. They couldn't really get on the radio like that. So they had to take pieces of their artist merch. They had to offer merch services. They had to offer different things to their artists to keep the lights on. So it's truly an independent model in general. To me, it's more of a community thing when it's done fairly or when it's done together. You know, so I don't look at it as the great boogeyman as it's been marketed. But I think that now we're in a similar space to where we were in the early 2000s. And I think we're going to have to start, we're going to see a lot more people utilize things that are happening in the blockchain to find innovation. Because the internet is not that wild, it's not that west. And so many of the same people own or control the same levers.
Well, Justin, hold on before you say something, Pascal. We have to admit that Justin just crushed that.
Here it comes! Oh my God!
I
appreciate
a wrestling drop for that one. That was I agree. I agree with that. What do you want to say, Pascal? I know
I think that was a great answer, man. I really appreciate Justin's ability to really synthesize his explanations of how the industry is transforming before us in the ways it's changing. Are you one of those folks who's kind of bitter on the music, Justin, who's like, oh, all this music today sucks, and back when I was a kid, the music was wonderful, and blah blah blah? You think that's just some old man get off my lawn shit, or is there some truth to that?
Well, I think nostalgia is a hell of a drug. So I don't know if that's something that the typical person's able to get past. I also feel like supporting the youth is something that, I've always done in my life, even away from music. When I have younger cousins or my friends' kids and they have an interest in Batman or Legos, whatever they like, I try to understand why and support them in their, positions, right? And then use my experience to color things that maybe they don't necessarily get a chance to see. Now, if I'm comparing eras, I tend to like my rap competitive. I like it when my rappers are trying to just be the best rapper, whether or not they're being outward about it, right? Maybe, you couldn't tell that Doom was trying to be better than everybody else, but he was writing like he was writing against the world, Maybe you couldn't tell who, Kicking the Door was for, but you knew Biggie was saying he is better than somebody else, right? And so it tends to be what I miss the most about this era, right? Because rap is so much bigger than hip hop that I'm not seeing the level of competitiveness with people with the microphone in the same way that I'm used to and that I love the most. I'm only seeing that level of competitiveness through metrics like streams and sales, right? And so, it's not a critique necessarily on the artist. It's a critique on, the things that I grew up loving that attracted me to hip hop that aren't necessarily in the marketplace in the same way. I'm not saying that nobody's doing that. Clearly, J. Cole is. A new J. Cole album is coming out because he's dry dissing somebody. He's throwing a Molotov cocktail. He's pointing out Eminem or Iggy Azalea or Wale or Kanye or Lil Pump or whoever. He disses somebody first, and then he tells you about how he grew up and he lost his virginity. And all that stuff. But that's how he engages. Like, he starts the friction off first, competitive hip hop, and then he moves on with the rest of the day. And so, to me, that's the biggest difference. I don't begrudge the kids for their decisions. I think that everybody needs to know as much as they can about hip hop, but also have to be honest. Rap is so much bigger than the other elements and the rest of the culture that a lot of these kids can't tell the difference.
Well, I find it interesting that you say that. There was a show, and if you remember this, Justin, I'll be shocked because I know I got you by a few years on age. It was called Robert Townsend and His Partners in Crime. And they do a skit on that show where they tease Tribe Called Quest.
Oh, really? I think
yes.
Is that the same show that had the Bold, the Black, and the Beautiful on it?
Yep, it's on the Bold, the Black, and the Beautiful skit.
All right. Oh, I forgot that skit though. I forgot that skit.
It's easy to forget because you see a very young, like 13 or 14-year-old Marlon and Sean Wayans playing the Tribe Called Quest-esque band that is rapping off beat and they have dreads and weird hair. Because
Oh,
that's, that was kind of even De La made fun of it, and Me, Myself, and I, they definitely stood out with their look.
Daisy Age. They're making fun of the Daisy Age.
yeah.
The inner sound, y'all.
But this is what I'm saying. Can you imagine that? I mean, that was that was Robert Townsend's generation prevailing opinion. Who are these Daisy hippie looking rappers? Rappers that have on Adidas and shoulder pads. like it just happens. You can't. It's always going to be there. So
Oh, I don't.
Kids for taking a style somewhere. I can remind them that there is a competitive nature that all of hip hop has. Each element, whether it's graffiti, whether it's breakdancing, whether it's DJing, whether it's MCing, beatboxing, even the knowledge component. I mean, cats used to rap about being smart. They would rap about how many words they knew, and their vocabulary was illa. Like every element has a level of competition to it, and outside of that is just music. And hip hop has always been so much more than just a product sold.
When I worked in the Gulf of Mexico for a hot minute. For people that don't know, new to the show, I cooked on oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico for a short time.
They were,
and I remember my first week when they found out I was from California, which didn't take long. They were like, "Who the fuck is this asshole?" This guy goes, "You from California? Where all the gangsters are smart." I was like, "What?"
Right. I mean, there you go. I mean, the ones we saw on TV were, you can say a lot with say anything you want about the real Rick Ross. He was smart, like he was in a no-win situation, but was he a great asset to our community? But I would say he was smart. I wouldn't go as far to say the world needed him, but he maximized his gangsterisms.
Pascal can't even say anything.
Definitely maximize something. It was maximization, all right.
It was maximization,
Hey, he's a background character in the Whoop There It Is video.
See, look at that's influence right there. That's let you know influence.
You go from a background character in the Whoop There It Is video to being the drug kingpin, date rape don of hip hop.
Yeah.
Well, Justin, I appreciate you not getting all generationally negative on contemporary hip hop and being all like, "Yo, this stuff sucks." I respect it. I respect that, man. I like the optimism. I'm a kind of a fan of the old school, but I'll give the new stuff a try. I'll see what's out there.
Well, I have a question for you. Do you like new releases from old school MCs?
I don't even like much of the new stuff old school MCs are doing now.
See, that to me is where I always.
I'll be very honest with them. I feel like a lot of the old MCs are trying to sound like something new. Like they're trying to improvise their sound and not be loyal to what it is. And I'm like, come on. And also, part of me thinks that hip hop is a young man's game. Like, I don't know if I want to see a 60-year-old geriatric Wu-Tang Clan trying to rock the mic. I'm not particularly sure if I'm excited to see Method Man coming around getting his some Medicare card talking about 1 2 1 2 on the microphone. I mean, maybe it's me. I get it. But the point I'm saying,
just die at 27 like a good star.
I will say this: I do like watching my MCs rock their old material. Like I'll watch videos of MCs I like rocking their old stuff at concerts. New stuff that they come out with,
See, that's exactly what I mean. And I'm not. This isn't a shot by any means. I know I could definitely commiserate with this feeling 100%. Right? I don't always want a new Bone Thugs and Harmony album. I don't always want it. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times I find myself either not liking it because it sounded too old, or not liking it because it doesn't sound old, and that's not fair to the artist, right? But here's what I mean by that. One, hip hop has never had a chance to not be a young man's game, right? Because it would be up to us to say, hey, it's cool to like an old rapper now, right? It's literally the first time in hip hop history, truthfully, where you can get an LL Cool J still rocking the mic. First of all, LL's show is still one of the illest shows ever.
That's true.
Second of all, Wu-Tang puts on one of the craziest shows now. I mean, they're still a festival destination headliner wherever they are. And then 3, anybody listening to this now, go listen to this new Method Man album that just came out. Like he is rapping along with Benny the Butcher. He is rapping along with RJ Payne. And his mic is tight. You know, there's a lot of people who I listened to the new KRS-One. I really wanted to listen. I really wanted to like this. I really wanted to like this new KRS-One. I wanted to like this, you know. But to that point though, I wasn't into the production. His mic is still tight. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's up to us to give our artists a chance with their new stuff, because I don't think it's. I personally think it's unfair that, you know, Rolling Stones get to be whoever they want, or U2 get to do whatever they want. I want to see a whole bunch. I want to see, a Juice Crew reunion on tour. I would love to see.
I'm with you, Justin. I'm with you 100%, because I saw from a finance standpoint when I worked at Desert Trip, I saw, you know, nostalgia acts make money, and I think what you saw at Coachella, as we are heading off to the end of the hour, what you saw at Coachella, even though, you know, Billie Eilish, I think, was one of the headliners, she brought out older artists, and Oingo Boingo was one of the headliners. And I'm like, why? There's something to be said about the COVID lockdown and people not being able to tour. There is a lot to be said about people really not listening to new music the way people think they listen to new music, because it has to be curated.
Yeah.
New music is still being curated via playlists. Playlists are still very, very much pay to play. The pay to play system is extremely relevant in 2022, just like it was in 1954.
Yeah.
You know,
and you know, and that's you know, I think that speaks to the environment we're in and how similar it is to the previous one. You know, I think
definitely try checking out some of my old school artists' new material. I want to definitely try to do that and give it a fair listen to. I appreciate I appreciate the advice. You're opening my mind to trying to be less judgmental about the genre.
Yeah, I mean, look, man,
Justin, are you gonna be able to come with us to the patron half right now?
You say it again.
Are you gonna be able to come with us to the patron only half, that bottom link that I sent you?
Oh yeah, where's it at? Where do I click it?
Just click the bottom link. I'm gonna end the show.
Okay.
And we're gonna go to it's for patrons only, and they get to call in. So I'm sure there's gonna be a lot of calls where people want to tell us why LL Cool J is a copy of Tila Rock. I'm sure someone's gonna have that argument. I'm ready for all hip hop arguments. I'm saying right now, bring your hip hop arguments to the mat, because I said it. Not a fan of the first Biggie album. Nigga, what?
I still can't find this link I'm supposed to put. Is it a private chat? Is this the private chat link?
No. It's in the email I sent you for the.
Oh, the email. Okay,
yeah,
bro. Yeah, I know
the bottom on the thing.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Justin, for hanging out, and I'm really getting excited for the we call it the champagne room.
Okay.
So click that link. So exit out of here. Click that link. We will see you guys. It's already up for patrons. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. Let's continue this conversation. I'm here for the spicy takes. Pascal does not listen to old artists that have new music. Jason thinks Biggie's first album is not that good. Justin probably has a spicy take in there somewhere.
I got a couple spicy takes.
He's got nuance, but now he's not on his show, so he knows, well, I can say fucked up shit now. I'm not on my show. We're going behind a paywall. He's gonna say even more fucked up shit. You're gonna hear the real deal.
I'm gonna have a whole bunch of crazy stuff. Wait till you see where I rank Crisscross.
Oh, so let's do it. All right, and we are out.
Peace.